All right, let's talk about Anthony Fauci because there's been some wild revelations over the past few days. So he's finally speaking to Congress. They're looking into it, the whole COVID fiasco, and I call it a fiasco because there are so many unanswered questions. Let's get straight into it. There were two main issues that I found so eye-opening about this testimony. So number one was the lab leak theory. Back in 2020, if you wanted more information about the lab leak theory, if you thought that maybe the virus had come from the Wuhan lab instead of from the wet market, which was the narrative at the time, then you were labeled a conspiracy theorist by Anthony Fauci and pretty much everyone else. The thing with Fauci is he was the czar of COVID. Everyone hung off every word he said about COVID, about the genesis of it, and also about what we should do about it, the response. So if he said the lab leak theory was a conspiracy, then that was the narrative at the time. There was no questioning it because Anthony Fauci said it. Fast forward to 2024 and this Congress hearing, but it comes out now that the real reason he dismissed it was not because it was a conspiracy theory. He actually later admitted in secret that he actually took it seriously, but because his agency, which is the National Institute of Health, actually paid for gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So he had a vested financial interest and reputational interest in not letting this theory get out. The second point of interest that came out of these hearings were these draconian rules that Fauci came up with and then implemented and spread across the world throughout this COVID period. So the 6-foot rule, when you're at a restaurant or when you're at a shopping center or pretty much anywhere in the office, at a school, you weren't allowed to sit closer or stand closer than 6 foot from your neighbor. You would have thought that some scientist would have come up with this in some lab somewhere. You would think that there'd be some equation based on how far spit reaches, how far a cough reaches. I don't know. But Anthony Fauci has now admitted that this rule, quote, sort of just appeared and, quote, wasn't based on scientific data. I truly cannot believe that this is real life, that this happened 3 years ago. This wasn't some 18th century thing where we didn't have access to information and resources and we kind of just had to pluck information out of the air. No. This was 3 years ago with all of the modern day necessities that we have, modern day medicine, science, and they came up with, we don't know where it came from. I am speechless with this. I'm speechless because these rules had such a profound impact on our society and on the way we live. And there are people who are still battling and still in the trenches, have had their lives turned upside down because of these draconian rules that happened during COVID. People couldn't see dying family members. People couldn't get married. People's businesses were shut down and have never come back. Kids couldn't go to school and they've now lost 2 years of schooling. They're behind, which is reflected in academic outcomes across the world. All because one guy who was appointed for some reason as the master of COVID came up with some rules based on nothing, pulled out of thin air, that has now irreversibly changed our society forever. It's just crazy that this was allowed. And what's more is that he's not going to face any consequences. He has gotten awards since COVID. He has also landed a $5 million memoir deal with a book publisher. How is that for punishment? The guy is rewarded for ruining our society during COVID. What can you say? And you can't say anything because he's part of the elite, the ruling class, and no one's going to dare punish him because he still holds the power. I'm going to end it here because I have nothing more to say. We can't do anything about it. Nothing will change. No repercussions will be felt. So what's the point? You kind of have to just throw your hands up in the air at some point because nothing we say is going to change anything. And that's a really depressing thought.